event. Pete and Majhon is going to join us soon. I'd love to know where everyone is kind of calling in from. I see that we have someone from Northern California, Miami, so feel free to add in what state, country. We always love to know where our MSP members are calling in from. Hey, Pete.
Yo, what's
How's it
happening?
going? Happy Thursday.
It's
Oh, we have
good.
someone from
Do you
LA.
like do you like my hotel meeting room background?
I do. You're always on the go. It's awesome. You always are on the move, and I love how we are both wearing fun shirts today. I hope
That's your Eduardo shirt, right?
it is my Eduardo shirt. For those of you who are familiar with MSP, you probably know our another community event manager, Eduardo. He always has fun shirts, so I got influenced by him. I got my own. Yeah, we're twinning. Thank you, Kimaya. Amazing. So we'll give folks a couple more minutes to trickle in. I always like to start things off with a fun icebreaker. Pete, do you have any fun big weekend plans coming up now that we're kind of in Friday Junior? I like to call Thursdays.
Right. Well, we are I'm taking my 5-year-old to the pumpkin patch on
Oh,
Saturday, so it should be
nice.
fun. We'll we'll go find. Oh, hi, Majan.
Hi,
We'll go
Majhon.
we'll find a couple pumpkins. And the thing that Mikey's really into or excited about this time around is to do the corn maze.
Oh, wow. Nice. Very
Yeah,
cool. Is
yeah.
there like a
He
scarecrow? Does he do the carving of the pumpkins in the farm, or is that more so when you take that
No,
home?
we're gonna do those later. But the big thing, he's always kind of been like a little afraid of like the corn maze, like they mix it like a big, what is it, a topiary maze, but
Yep.
it's out of like grown grown corn. This year he's like, I really want to do that. I'm like, all right, cool, man, you're on your own. Your mom and I'll go be, over here at the bar. No, just
Look at
kidding.
him overcoming his fear. That's awesome. Mahjong, do you have any fun weekend plans coming up?
Oh man, we had a big weekend last week. My mom came to New York City to visit, and we were just all over
Woohoo!
town. This week, we're going to the Global Citizens Festival in Central Park, which is going to be awesome. Metallica, Charlie Puth, lots of bands
Ha!
there.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
Metallica.
I
Damn, yo.
know. Going hard in Central Park. And then I'm going to sleep, I think, probably all day Sunday. It's going to be great.
Nice. Sounds like a plan. Amazing. Well, excited to dive right into today's topic, Sink or Swim Manager Reps Through a Downturn. But before we begin, this event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at MSP. And for those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operation, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own, and we do that through live sessions like the one that you're at today, our online forum, our quarterly summits, and our in-person events. If you were in SF on Tuesday, I hope you were at our happy hour at De La Rosa. It was such a good time. It was so nice to meet everyone there. And for those who couldn't make it, stay tuned. We'll come to a city near you in the near future now that in-person events are coming back. And speaking of our summits, next month, October 11th to the 13th, we have a 3-day Revenue Excellence Summit happening next month. We pulled together 24 events of amazing content and speakers. You'll hear from CEO of Zoom Info, Gainsight, Cowboy Ventures, Winning by Design, as well as sales leaders at Lattice, Pendo, Outreach, Atrium, and more. So I'll drop the link to sign up in the chat. So get your tickets today. It's going to be an amazing event. Now, before we pass it off to the lovely sponsor and our 2 amazing speakers today, just some quick housekeeping notes. Please leverage the Q&A panel at the top right-hand corner. If you have a question for Pete and Majhon, definitely ask your questions and we can definitely answer them live. And then, of course, last but not least, this event is going to be recorded. All the key takeaways and Pete's amazing slide deck will be made available at the end of the day on the MSP previous event page, as well as the data-driven sales management content track on our website. So definitely check that out. Now, enough about MSP. I'm going to pass it off to Pete to say a few words about Atrium and then introduce himself, and then the lovely Majhon. And I'll come back for the closing remarks. Pete, go ahead.
Sweet. Okay. Hey everybody. We are. Hey Majhon, I think we're picking up some sound in the background there. I think there you go. So hey everyone, I'm Pete Kazanjy. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. We make data-driven sales management software that helps sales managers, leaders, and reps use metrics to improve the performance of their teams. One of the things that's super cool about Atrium is it takes about 5 minutes to set up. You just sign up with for a free account using a read-only connection to your CRM, and within 5 minutes you have a world-class metrics harness for your sales organization. And then moreover, Atrium will monitor all those KPIs in order to help you understand who needs help, who's taking care of business, and why, such that you can intervene and change rep behavior for the better. So that's us. Let's talk about who your presenters are today. I'm Pete Kazanjy, like I mentioned earlier. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. I'm also our CRO. I'm responsible for our go-to-market function. Prior to Atrium, sold my last software company, TalentBin, to Monster Worldwide in 2014. And so TalentBin was really where I started kind of learning modern sales excellence. I was a business generalist founder who then realized that, like, hey, the software doesn't sell itself. It needs someone to sell it. That's your job now. That our first sales sales manager, first sales leader. And then when we were acquired by Monster Worldwide, I was responsible for new product sales at Monster, which was a bit of a change because going from a 20-person sales organization to a 600-person sales organization was just a little bit of a shift there. And then lastly, after I left Monster, I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales and started Modern Sales Pro. So that's a little bit on me. But more importantly, we have Majhon Phillips here with us. Hello, Majhon. How's New York?
Hey, Pete. New York is good. It's hard to follow a living legend like that.
Majhon, why don't you introduce yourself and let folks know what you spend your time on here at Atrium?
Absolutely. So I have a background in tech PR as well as music and management. Before I came to Atrium, I had started a company in the Bay Area. We were doing music lessons for about 300 students a week. I sold that, moved to New York City, and was looking for my next step, and connected with Pete and this wonderful organization, and have grown through the ranks from being an IC myself and using Atrium to coach my own performance all the way to now being the manager of the customer implementation team. So I'm using data every day to make sure that the reps are doing what they need to do, and we've got a really scalable team in motion and implementation and customer success.
Yeah, totally. And Majhon is the dean of Atrium University. That's what we call it. Our implementation process is Atrium. Who came up with that? Was that Bridget or was that Sean? I can't remember.
I think it was Bridget.
We were like implementation. That sounds too stuffy. Atrium U, that sounds rad. This is where you learn how to be amazing at data-driven sales management. So Majhon's team, at this point, I think it's 4 implementation staff, Atrium U instructors. Now, I think it's a 4-person team. So they're responsible for getting people, after people purchase, getting them up and successful, really helping people get comfortable with data-driven sales management, weaving metrics throughout their operating rhythm there. So I'm super pumped to have Majhon here with us today to kind of talk about managing sales organizations in economic wobbly times, because she and her team interact with a lot of sales organizations, right? So they know a lot of stuff, and they've seen a lot of stuff. Before we get started into the content here, one of the things that we're really big on here at Atrium is educating the community. One of the mechanisms by which we do that is through our wonderful customer success function, who helps our customers get to success. But then also one of the things that we realize is that just helping sales managers or like new sales managers be better managers, even outside of like the data piece of it, the metrics piece of it, is really important, and something that people don't get invested in as much as would be would be ideal. So what we do is we work with a gentleman named Richard Harris, who's an absolutely fantastic sales trainer. He does a boot camp for us. He actually does 2 boot camps for us, one for sales managers, one for sales leaders, so second level leadership, right? Managing managers. We're going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat here. It's completely free for Atrium customers, but also people in the community as well. Normally would be like $1,000 cost for something like this, and all we ask for in exchange is to have a quick discovery conversation with one of our account executives to just kind of talk through how to use data in your sales organization. So that is, I think we're going to drop that in the chat here. So I'm excited to talk about, and actually I think I'm going to share my screen here instead of using that. And then we're going to do a little like hall of mirrors here. Hey, okay, cool. Because I don't have my external monitor. I need to get one of our external travel monitors that I have, that all of our account executives have. But what we're going to be talking about is sales management in a downturn, kind of like economically wobbly time. Majhon, can you see my screen okay? Because I can't see your smiling face anymore. We good? All right, cool.
Good.
Killer. All right. So what we're going to be talking about is a number of kind of different steps here, kind of notion of that shows up in economic kind of like wobbly times. I think across our nearly 300 customers, I think we're seeing some organizations that are having a little bit of wobbliness. We see other organizations that are like thriving. So it's kind of, that's why I call it like wobbly. Right, it's not 100% clear, which category you might be in, which is of course why it's important to have data to kind of help you with that. Kind of the topics that we're going to be going through is pivoting a sales team, finding new baselines for your sales motion, driving better efficiency or effort and efficiency in your teams, and then potentially right-sizing your sales organization. So first, let's talk about this notion of pivoting from growth first to efficiency first. In the last, maybe 5 years, potentially 10 years, but certainly the last 5 years, if you have been selling or going to market in kind of like the venture-backed SaaS space or any sort of like growth markets, because of the ability to get easy money, there's been a lot of emphasis on growth at all costs versus efficiency. And so what that has meant in kind of the old world was lots of marketing spends on your side from your marketing team. On the flip side, prospects are a little looser with their budget, so higher win rates. All of this kind of leads to quicker sales cycles, fewer approvers. So all sorts of fun stuff, right? Like shooting fish in a barrel. And in the new world, with some organizations being a little bit more fastidious in how and how they husband those resources, less marketing spend, inbound being a lot less voluminous there, tighter budgets on the side of the prospects, which of course compresses win rates, dragging out sales cycles, which the CFO or the finance organization showing up in what previously might have been like, yeah, you know what, I'm the director of XYZ. This is my budget. I'm responsible for it. I can do any sort of like things that I want, versus like, yeah, anything over 10K has to be approved by the CFO. So these are sort of the kind of like, this is the old and this is the new here. And so there's ramifications associated with this. The good news is that I think to a certain extent, a lot of this is actually healthy for organizations, because it drives more rigor than we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. But it's still an adjustment. And so the steps that we need to go through there in order to kind of accommodate this is, one, we got to figure out what our new baselines are. If indeed your sales motion has changed, if indeed your win rates have shifted substantially, if indeed, if those things have changed, if your ASPs have compressed, it's really important for us to know that, rather than us pretending that everything is kind of the same. Secondarily, driving more effort in your sales organization is something that this is a great opportunity to do, and also focus in on ramping up efficiencies, because in situations like this, it's kind of easier to have hands-off sales management, to maybe have a more lackadaisical pace, to maybe be a little more sloppy with respect to pipe hygiene and kind of things like that. Like, oh yeah, marketing will source some more ops. It's I don't have to be on top of every single one of my my opportunities. And I think that that's changing pretty substantially in our customers. And then potentially you're having to right size your sales team there. So first, let's go ahead and talk about finding new baselines. And so what this is I like to kind of refer to this as like the physics of a sales organization. Everyone, and this is one of the reasons why whenever people kind of ask me or they ask on Modern Sales Pros forum for like benchmarks, um, what's a good benchmark for a win rate? What's a good benchmark for an ASP? What's a good benchmark for an XYZ? Usually there aren't benchmarks, largely because your physics for your sales organization are kind of contingent on the quality of the product, how much competition there is in the market, what your prospects look like, et cetera, et cetera. And so those physics for your existing sales motion, when the market changes, the physics change. And so this is what we mean by when I say figuring out new baselines, is you have to go and say, hey, have those fundamental KPIs changed in a meaningful way, because that's then going to have implications for my AEs, for my SDRs and what have you. And then once you figure those out, now what we need to do is set new goals based on that. Because if for whatever reason your win rates have substantially compressed, and it's unclear how you can drive more opportunity, ownership, or more volume, well, historical quotas might be out of alignment with what is actually attainable there. And so got to figure out those new baselines. You gotta have to set new goals on this, and then enforce those new baselines. And so what we're going to talk about here is kind of how to do that. First and foremost, the kind of key KPIs you're going to want to re-benchmark in your organization are really just kind of like the meat and potatoes there. Like, you could get more detailed, but I think the important thing is just do like a health check on your organization. And so on AE side of things, that's going to be the revenue formula. It's like bookings, new opportunity inflow, win rate, average selling price, and deal cycle, right? Those are our meat and potatoes revenue formula. And on the SDR side, it's going to be the same thing, but for pipeline generation. So opportunities created, new accounts engaged, new contacts engaged, opportunities created per account engaged. So conversion here. This essentially is like SDR win rate here, right? How many ops are being created per account engaged. And then, so these are the kind of the core things here. And then what are the new realities? So what you're going to have to do is look at what is the appropriate sampling period to understand what the new appropriate level of bookings or appropriate level of new opportunity inflow or win rate might be. For AEs, good rule of thumb there is at least one sales cycle, maybe longer if you're a low volume sales organizations, but that's why you'll have to pay attention to more precursors. Majhon, when your team has been working with our customers on these sort of things, anything like, does this align with kind of your experience there? Are there more metrics that the team looks to potentially re-benchmark? What are your kind of comments there?
Absolutely. I think the revenue formula is number one, and pipeline formula for SDRs, that's absolutely where we start. I am seeing people being a little bit more prescriptive with their teams as far as pipe hygiene too. So looking at like days between op touches and stuck ops and things like that, making sure that things are really tight, especially as win rates are dwindling.
Sure. Yes. Clean it up. Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the efficient, like, new standards of efficiency section, but that's a good point, right? Saying, hey, you know what? Historically, we've had this level of untouched opportunities, or historically, we've had this level of of email responsiveness from our prospects from an SDR standpoint. And what we want to do is get better at that, right? Because we're not just going to throw more wood on the fire necessarily. We want to do a better job with the fuel that we've already put in there. Cool. And so this is just some visualizations of what that might kind of look like in practice. This is pretty basic. This essentially is a metric card for meetings on calendar for an AE team. And what you can see is that the team went from 20 customer facing meetings a week-ish to around 10 or so there. And this was the kind of the meeting volume change here for an 8-rep mid-market AE team. On the flip side, this is an SDR KPI here. This is email engagement rate. This is a kind of a fancy version of email response rate. And so what you can kind of see here is a shift between responsiveness. The team had previously been in the 10% range there, and it dropped down quickly there. And so like what you're going to want to, this is a pretty pronounced. These are screenshots from right around the time that COVID started in March 2020. But in your situation, it may be a little less pronounced. They might be more kind of like a gradual kind of decline, and then like a bottoming eventually. But this is the sort of thing that you're going to want to look for there. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take these re-baselined metrics here, and then fill that into the bookings formula here in order to say, okay, cool, the new win rate is blah, the new ASP is blah, the new average sales cycle is blah, the new number of opportunities that my AEs can carry, or I can feed my AEs is blah. And so that, and then what comes out of that is an imputed bookings amount that you would anticipate across the team. And if you're unhappy with that, that means that we have to change something over here. And so what that might be is, okay, like we got to raise our win rates because new opportunity inflow has degraded, right? Or alternatively, like there isn't something to be done about, like our ASPs are down, we have to raise our win rates, or our ASPs are down, or our win rates are down, we have to raise the number of opportunities that we're working by having our account executives do more prospecting behavior or what have you. And so all of that kind of comes from this this metrics driver tree here. And so actually we have these in the form of laminates. They're desk reference laminates that we send to our customers. If folks are interested in grabbing a couple of those, we can drop the sign up in the chat there. They're pretty fun to kind of hang out on your desk. But that's the AE version of that. And then the SDR version of that is kind of the equivalent, but for opportunity creation as well. So again, looking at those, the operation volumes crossed with a acceptance rate will give you how many sales accepted ops that you're getting, and then the number of opportunities that you're creating, which of course flows into this, comes from how many unique accounts are being engaged, crossed with the ratio between accounts touched to op creation, which is again is like SDR win rate there. Cool. So that's what you would do there. And so then the next question would be, hey, well, what is the appropriate sampling period for me to understand that this really is the new baseline for our team there? And there's kind of 3 things that you would want to kind of think about there. Well, first and foremost, you're going to need to use your metrics harness for this. If that's something that you haven't invested in historically, the good news is this is why we make it so quick to set up a free Atrium account. In 5 minutes, you can have just all of these metrics ready and ready to go for you by setting up a free Atrium account. But regardless if you use Atrium for that or you use something else, these are the sort of things that you're going to want to think about in terms of setting that sampling period or considering that. So first, the number of reps. Like if you have a really large number of SDRs or AEs in your sales organization, you're going to be able to see statistically significant changes in data pretty quickly. Like if you have 100 reps, it might be a couple weeks. If you have 10 reps, it might be like a month or what have you. Secondarily, if your sales motion is faster, the quicker the sales motion, the faster you'll be able to be like confident in that. So if you sell to SMB and your sales cycle is like more like 30 days, if you're mid-market in 60 to 90 days, these are just things that you should consider. Enterprise, of course, is the biggest pain there because it's like there's such big time offsets between when leading indicators change and when lagging indicators change, which is why it's all the more important for you to be focused on leading indicators there, which we'll kind of talk about here a little bit. There's precursor metrics, And then there's output metrics, right? So the output metrics would be things like bookings and wins and what have you. And then precursor metrics would be things like customer facing meetings, new opportunity inflow, the unique number of accounts interacted with. You should anticipate seeing changes in precursor metrics faster than you would see changes in output metrics. And so that means that you can make judgments about the changes of those precursor metrics more quickly there. Majhon, when you guys have been doing this with our customers, what what have you seen for like different sizes of organizations or sales motion velocity? Anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I mean, so I think sort of to go back, take a little bit step back, the biggest thing that we've been seeing in this economic downturn is really just people needing some sort of compassion or camaraderie, understanding that it's happening to so many across the board, right? That yes, we're in this difficult situation, and I'm seeing it all the way from like freight tracking through like staffing agencies all the way to like the cannabis industry, right? So across the board, people are in this together.
Literally, as you were saying those things, I was thinking of each of the customers that you're referring to, and I'm like, oh my God, that's hilarious. I was literally thinking of, I'm not going to name names there, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's like showing up in all these different places.
Yeah. So I think the other thing too is when I'm saying, oh, I'm seeing this across the board, they're like, oh, wait, really? Like, this isn't just me. And it's like, no, it's not just you. Like, everybody's in this together. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. In the sales motion velocity, a lot of times we're looking at it for a couple of sales cycles, for the SMB markets. 30 to 60 days, you're sort of seeing those changes, and that's sort of what we're basing new things on. It's definitely harder in the enterprise. I think that they haven't quite wrapped their head around this is the new normal yet, because we've not quite gotten there, right, from when all this started. But I think that'll be coming in like the December, January timeframe where that'll get reset.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because one of the things, I mean, this is kind of why we do sessions like this, but one of the things that folks oftentimes struggle with is like, oh, like my win rates have compressed over here. Is that because like we're bad at our job? Like, and we used to not be bad at our job? It's like, no. There's a bunch of folks that are kind of seeing this as well. Oh, okay, great. I feel like I still, not my fault, but still my problem. At least that kind of like feels a little bit better than like, man, did we forget how to sell? Like, what's going on here? I think that's really excellently well said there. Cool. So kind of some examples here. Again, you can kind of see the email engagement rate kind of change here for a 10-person SDR team. This is actually pretty fascinating here. You can see this is a 50-person SDR team here, and you can set like, I mean, even within a week, you could see the level of efficiency of opportunity creation degraded pretty substantially here. About had to do about 30% more activities per opportunity created as compared to their historical baseline there. Again, the number of meetings on the calendar for on a per rep average basis changed pretty quickly because this is a leading indicator, right? Customer facing meetings versus like bookings or wins or what have you. The one thing that you're going to want to make sure about is that it actually is an average. And what I mean by that, or sorry, like it's an appropriate average. And so what I mean by that, and I guess the more like statistically appropriate way of doing this might be like median or what have you, but also like we use metrics to measure and improve sales organizations, and sales organizations are populated by humans, so this isn't like chemistry, right? Like humans are kind of messy and squishy, so eyeballing things can be important. But what you can kind of see here is what you want to make sure of is that it's not just like one person who's wildly pulling down the performance as compared to some other folks who might still be steady stating. So the average may, if you weren't unpacking that into looking at an entire team individually, you might be potentially head faked by that, and you don't want to necessarily do that. So cool. So then what you want to do is like, once you've gotten your arms around what those new baselines might look like, you might end up cascading that to new quotas, right? And that might be, there might not be a change, or alternatively, it might be the the softening of quotas based on the information that you gathered by doing that rebaselining motion. Hopefully you are in the situation where your sales motion hasn't changed and you don't actually have to do that. Cool. So next, let's go ahead. I think this is going to be one I'm really excited about having Majhon talk about quite a bit, because I'm a big fan of of operationally excellent sales organizations. And so what that means is driving a high level of effort and efficiency in AE and SDR teams. This is something that I'm a big Bill Walsh fan. Standard of excellence, where people should be putting in the calories, having a high level of effort. Like, as we talk about at Atrium, a high quantity of high quality selling activity is what drives outcomes. And it's, like I was mentioning earlier, we have nearly 300 customers here at Atrium, and over the last 5 years, it's been really shocking to me. Some of these organizations that turn on an Atrium account, it's like, your AEs are really only having that many customer facing meetings a week. Yikes! I guess that's a lot of golf, I suppose. And so I think that there's an opportunity here for sales management and sales leadership, SDR management, SDR leadership, to really have an opportunity for a cultural shift around embracing operationally excellence and the high standard of excellence, with this as kind of the backdrop there. And so the things that you need to think about in this situation is hey, what is the correct level of effort, right? And as kind of noted, in good times, sometimes levels of effort are lackadaisically enforced. Nobody wants, it's uncomfortable oftentimes to be the heavy as a sales manager or a sales leader. And so as a result, people just avoid doing it. It turns out, right? And so now there's an opportunity to say, hey, this is the level of effort that is required in order to get the job done, and we're going to enforce that. But of course, what that means is we have to understand what that correct level of effort is. The same is true on the efficiency side as well. Majhon was kind of noting this earlier, as relates to a little bit more sophisticated KPIs, like untouched opportunities or stuck opportunities or opportunity conversion rates. Those are things that are more important to eyeball at this point, because there may not be more ops coming through the pipe for you to do that. And so just kind of understanding both of these, and then saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and instrument these and hold people accountable to them, and then we're going to enforce that. Majhon, what have you seen in terms of organizations you've been working with in order to kind of glow up their level of effort, their level of efficiencies, whether it's on SDR teams or on AE teams?
Yeah, even starting with my own team, I would say I'm looking for really strong levels of banding in the trend lines, right? As far as everybody being together, because you're only as strong as your weakest player. So if you start seeing people fall out of band, just really trying to course correct that quickly. I actually had, it was a funny and sad conversation with one of our customers who had an AE who was across the board, lower in everything, efficiency, even level of effort, just way far away from the rest of the pack. It was an AE. She confronted the person because she'd come to me and was like, hey, I need to see, where is this person? Are they even trying? It was a remote worker. She didn't know how are they spending their day? Lower on everything, meeting counts, ops held, moving ops through the funnel, conversions, win rates down. So she took that information to the A and was like, hey, we need to start some performance coaching. I need to see this starting to tick up. And he's like, nah, I'm really not into that. Bye. And she was like, okay, so this was a sad thing that he left the org, but at the same time, now I have more budget that I can spend to make sure that I get raises to my top performers and that we can continue moving forward as the belts tighten.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, that's yeah, that is a really great story. There's so many good things in that story. That is the crux of data-driven sales management right there, where it's not being the heavy, it's having a candid conversation around hey, what's the deal here, right? And you could totally imagine the alternative there would have been maybe someone who's checked out for another month, another 2 months, or what have you, and that's not good for them. That's not good for the team. If they've decided that they are not into, the product that they're selling, or maybe, maybe they've decided that they're just not into selling, or they're not into SDRing, or what have you, but potentially are afraid to have that conversation with the manager, afraid to have that to, quote unquote, let their team down. That's going to create, an environment of stasis, and we can't have that, right? And so this is one of the things that we see, especially with junior managers, who kind of are like, oh man, I'm not so sure, I don't want to be, the dick here. If they can show up with metrics and say, hey, I'm seeing this, what, like, can we talk about this? It just forces that conversation. It's like, it's not me being the heavy. I don't think that, like, you're naughty or whatever, but like, we can't dispute the fact that you're having 30% fewer customer facing meetings than your peers, right? Or we can't dispute the fact that your level of untouched ops are dramatically higher than everybody else, because, like, I'll tell you what, like, if marketing knew that their hard-earned ops, or SDR knew that their hard-earned or hard-created opportunities were not being, like, treated with tender love and care, they're probably going to be pretty upset, not just at you, but also at me as the leader here. So I think that's a really fantastic kind of story that demonstrates the importance of using data-driven sales management to, like, to compel those tougher stories. So these are some of the metrics you might think about there. Again, we're talking about level of effort and level of excellence or efficiency. Effort metrics are going to be things like, for SDRs, it's going to be like emails, calls, the unique number of contacts that have been interacted with, the unique number of accounts, the number of new accounts, so like net new accounts that have been being interacted with, net new contacts, and then of course efficiency metrics there would be like email responsiveness rate, kind of an indicator of how quality your messaging, or like how well you're targeting or doing contact selection. Things like touches per account, right? Like, are you touching the lead, are you touching the account or contact once and then setting it back down again? Yeah, that's that's not okay, right? Are you multi-threading within the account, or are you only interacting with one person? So these would be examples of effort metrics and efficiency metrics. On the AE side, the effort metrics would be things like, opportunity engagement, like how many ops are you touching in a given time frame, customer facing meetings, if your AEs are responsible for prospecting as well, how many accounts are they interacting with outside of their opportunities that they own. And then on the efficiency and kind of quality side, it would be things like win rate, of course, is a lagging indicator of efficiency, but then opportunity conversion rate, op stage conversion rates, kind of helping you understand things like, hey, if we get somebody into trials, are we doing a job? Which of our reps are doing a better or worse job of getting people out of a trial, right? And on to the next step. And then, as Majhon kind of was noting earlier, kind of hygiene metrics there, like untouched opportunities, stuck ops, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. So let's talk about, this notion of kind of setting new standards of level of effort. I call it kind of moving from a marathon pace to being like chased by a bear. So now what we want to do is, like, make sure that we're doing a good job of like both instrumenting and then setting clear expectations. Because again, this is something that, maybe over the last 5 years, organizations have been like, yeah, I mean, you have some meetings, versus like, hey, we have an expectation that you're having, north of 12 customer facing meetings a week, ideally up anywhere between like 12 to 18. If you're doing above 20, I would be worried about your ability to execute appropriate follow-up. But, like, just being very crisp about what the level of expectation is there. This is something that our customers use Atrium's goaling functionality for, to like set goals on weekly, monthly, and quarterly metrics, and just like have those monitored for the managers. And then one of the things that you want to do is, when you're kind of setting those new standards, you want to index off of top performers, not the top, because that might be a little hard for everybody to attain, but you'd kind of be shocked what you end up seeing when you look at, and I think Majhon was kind of talking about this earlier, around like banding, right? So this is a set of account executives right here with their customer facing meeting volume right here. And so what you kind of see, this is in the trailing 30 days, you can see that there's actually quite a bit of variation here. You do have a couple of top performers who really are, hitting the ball out of the park, and then you kind of see this like middle pack right here, and then you do see a couple of folks who are like down near the bottom. And so, if you did an average, you might say like, oh, well, that's just like right here. But instead, instead of saying, hey, we're gonna just set this at the average, you might instead say, hey, I'm not gonna set this all the way up to where the top performers are at, but I'm gonna set it right here where folks are more banded there. And so that in this case, that might be like, 23 or 25 customer facing meetings a month for this organization right here. And you can kind of see this pattern play out in other metrics as well. So this is accounts touched right here. Again, you can kind of see a set of reps who are above and beyond everybody else. And then you kind of see this pack right here. And then you can see a set of folks who are really kind of like mailing it in. And so again, what you can imagine doing is like setting the expectation right around in here for what what folks might be expected to do. Same with like customer facing email volume here, calling volume, unique accounts touched as well there. So that is so that is level of effort. The next thing that you would want to pay attention to, Majhon was referring to this earlier, is standards of level of efficiency, right? And level of like excellence. And so the thing here, and this is something that, like, it's pretty funny. This is where a bunch of our customer success collateral comes from, is organizations will show up and buy Atrium, even in like the sales process actually. So like even before they've transacted, when they're doing what we kind of call our sales strategy review, the number of untouched opportunities or stuck opportunities that are in account executive pipes will oftentimes just like turn you white. Like, oh my gosh, I thought that this rep had 40 ops in their pipe, but 20 of them haven't been touched in 30 days. Well, I guess they actually only have 20 ops in their pipe, right? Because the other 20 aren't like not real. And so this is where there's an opportunity, and you kind of understand where that comes from, where if account executives always know that there's going to be more opportunities coming into their pipe, if SDRs know that there's always going to be more inbound showing up, well, you can't really fault them to be like, yeah, you know what, that person was mean to me, or like, that I'm not 100% sure if that op is like a slam dunk there, so maybe I won't engage with it, right? But I'm not gonna kick it out of my pipe because I want the option on it in case they come back around again. And obviously that's not good for forecasting, and that's certainly not good for closing business. And so that's why paying attention to these level of excellence and efficiency metrics, maybe you haven't done it before, this is a good opportunity to kind of like use it as a forcing function to do that. So as Majhon noted earlier, for AEs, that would be things like untouched opportunities. We want that to be lower. Contacts per account. Are you multi-threading accounts well? Opportunity conversion rates. Anything else you would add to this, Majhon?
No, I think you covered it. Obviously, the stuck ops go along with that, but
right.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Yeah,
I've got a little bit of a story with this though, Pete. We had a customer come to us last month, and they were saying, we're having a hard time forecasting. I don't know what's going to happen even next week or next month. Like my pipe reviews, I'm just really struggling with. And I was like, okay, well, let's look into things. And untouched ops were the first place that I went to try to figure out, okay, what's going on?
Weird.
Right? So their AEs on average were carrying 3,000 ops a piece with like 2,500 untouched.
Wow.
And it's just like, of course you're struggling with forecasting. Look, I bet I can help you. And we've seen big progress, still a lot more to come. But I think it's just like recognizing it. They had no idea, right? If you don't see it in front of you, you hide it in Salesforce reports and they just sort of like disappear.
Right.
But good to know what's there. And I think that definitely helps.
Yes, hopefully most organizations don't have thousands of opportunities in their AE's pipe, but even if you're, I think even if you, so I think it's a really well taken about the negative implications of that with respect to forecasting, right? Like if each account executive has 40 ops in their pipe, and let's say that those opportunities, their close dates are this month, the next month, the month after that, the month after that, the month after that. Couple of things. Like one, if those if something is potentially forecast for next month or the month after that, because the close date hasn't been updated, or like the forecast category hasn't been updated, or what have you, then that's going to head fake your forecast. And so a really great indicator there is like, look, if the rep hasn't touched the op within 30 days, like, come on now, right? Like it's probably unlikely that that thing is like legit for next month or the month after that. And so just driving pipeline hygiene to ensure that reps are doing a good job of getting the crap out, like getting it out, sending it back to SDR, sending it back to marketing, et cetera, so it can come back around again, can be a really important thing there. On the SDR side of things, it's kind of similar. It would be things like email responsiveness rates, like are you doing a good job of engaging in a way that's going to elicit responsiveness, efficiencies on accounts touched op creation rates, touches per account, which is obviously really important, right? Like are we really working those accounts, right? It's kind of the analog to how, and actually this can be applied to account executives as well. Like, are you doing a good job of working the account, or are you just in touch with it, like, every other week or something like that, versus being on top of the accounts, being on top of the ops on a multiple times a week. And so let's kind of look at what this looks like in practice here. This is a little confusing because more untouched opportunities is bad. But what you can kind of see here is this is untouched opportunities over a trended time period. And you can see that there's a lot of variation here between the different account executives here. Like you can see a couple of reps right here who are just pretty abysmal at staying on top of their ops. This is not good. Like I would imagine that forecasting for these folks is probably pretty tough there. And then moreover, like there's a bunch of opportunities that are in their pipe that could really be better served going to somebody else. And then we see people who are like more top performing here. So in this case, you can totally imagine setting a goal and saying, hey, look, we have an expectation that at any given point in time, you have fewer than 10 untouched opportunities in your pipe, and we're going to hold you accountable to that. And actually, I think we actually have a case study on this. One of the things that you see, of course, is like when account executives are working their pipeline better, right? When they're on top of their ops and they don't have untouched ops or stuck ops, it turns out that win rates go up. Weird. Turns out that if you work your ops better, they're going to have a tendency to close better. And so we actually saw, as a result of the pipeline hygiene metrics being more observable and coaching being applied to the reps who are a little bit more lackadaisical there, lo and behold, win rates went up, and of course bookings went up on a per rep basis there. Same with another kind of efficiency metric here, or kind of excellence metric, contacts touch per account. This is this is how many contacts somebody is engaging in a given account or in a given op, multi-threading here. And again, you can kind of see the difference between people who are really working the heck out of their ops here and people who are a little bit more multi-threaded here. And so what you can imagine doing here is saying like, hey, we want everybody to strive to be engaged with at least 2.5 contacts per op, because if you're not, like that's really concerning to us, and then it's going to negatively impact your win rates. Same is true with like opportunity conversion rates. So what you can do here is, this is a little bit more of a sophisticated Atrium measure here. This is the percentage of opportunities that were in a given stage that convert to the next. And so what you can kind of see here is, and these are the stages down here, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, like fill in the blank for whatever your stage names are. And so what you can see here is that you have some reps who are, this rep right here, what is that, gray? The gray rep here, Toby Turtle, just has phenomenal conversion rates there. Obviously a very high win rate would come from this, but you do have, 1, 2, 3 reps down here that are underperforming in that regard. And so just understanding that we have an expectation that for each stage that you should be getting a certain number of the ops out of each stage to the next one, and then being able to pinpoint where people are underperforming there is really important there. Cool. So then the next step is, so that's levels of efficiency and levels of, or so we covered levels of level of effort and levels of efficiency there. A really great way. So once you've determined what those new levels are and we've published it out, the way you got to enforce that is by making sure that you have what we like to call a metrics harness in place. And so what that means is weaving these sort of metrics into an operating rhythm, stand-ups, team meetings, one-on-ones between managers and reps. Because if you do this once and then you just publish it, well, like you need that loop in order to understand, are we where we need to be? And if not, what we're going to do is we're going to coach on that. Hey, Frankie, we talked about how we need to have less than 10 untouched opportunities, and it's been 3 weeks in a row where in this meeting you have 30, so we need to make a change, or I'm turning you off from the new opportunity tab, right? Like that's data-driven sales management, and the only way that happens is if you have a metrics harness that is well posed there. So one, that means visualizing it appropriately, and then secondarily it means distributing it in a way that's really effective. Majhon, when you work with your customers, what are the ways that you find is most effective to make sure that that this metrics harness is being well distributed and being consumed appropriately?
Yeah, one of my favorites, I was with a manager and they just did it on their own without me even telling them. They were like, wow, this dashboard's great. It's got all of the like metrics that I need, and it's got our goal lines of what our harness is, what we're expecting of every rep. I'm going to take this, I'm going to not only distribute it to myself and to all the reps like an hour before our team meeting, but I'm also going to link it into our meeting agenda. I was like, yes, chef's kiss. That's what we like to see.
I love it. Yeah. The one of the jokes, and I talk about this more, I think in the masterclass, setting and managing with goals, is the old saying about if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, does it actually make a noise? If you have if you have an SDR activity dashboard, but like no one pays attention to it, like are the SDRs actually doing any activity? I don't know, who's to say, right? And then I think one of the things that I've historically kind of had a dim view of is the notion of having dashboards up on like TV screens and the on the sales floor. It's like fine for like instilling, or like not even instilling a culture of data driven. It's more kind of like, hey, we take this seriously. But if you're not talking about those things and looking at those things in one-on-ones and team meetings, and if it's not showing up into the inboxes, like being sent to the team at 8 a.m. every month, or like every morning, or if it's not being dropped into the team Slack channel, you're kind of doing lip service there. Wonderful. So then the last topic I want to touch on here is this notion of right sizing your sales organization, assuming that if that's something that needs to happen there. So, compressing the size of your sales team isn't like the most fun thing in the world, but if it is required that you have to do it, you want to do it in a thoughtful way. And so where this would really come from is, did your rebasing work indicate to you that your AEs were much lower efficiency than you thought, or like it changed, right? Are all your AEs operating at 60% capacity? Did you realize that you could get more output from your SDR team by setting that new level of effort benchmark? And so if that's true, right? If you learn these things, what that will do is that'll inform a new correct size of your sales organization. And so what that might mean is some of the account executives go away and need to be exited from the team because all of your AEs are operating at lower capacity, as an example there. One of the things, and so when you're thinking about who should go, what you want to do, and we'll walk through this, is first start looking at output to look for underperformers there, but that's not enough. What you want to look at is like where that deficit in output is coming from. Is it a will situation where, like kind of Majhon was talking about earlier in her story about somebody who was just kind of mailing it in from a customer facing meeting and like activity standpoint, or is it a skill situation where the level of effort is there, the desire is there, and the person just really needs to be upskilled a little bit there. Wonderful. So when you think about who should go, these are kind of like the buckets there. So look for folks who have problematic will and skill metrics. Then if you haven't made it to the level of reduction that you need, then go for the folks who have low levels of will before getting to the folks who have low levels of skill. And so we'll kind of go ahead and look at that here. So this right here is looking at those outputs there. What you can see is this rep, and this rep right here are underperformant as compared to everybody else. So these would be potential RIF candidates there. This is across a 6-month time period. Same here, Little Debbie, Jerry, and Mr. Woolensworth. I think it's the same people. Yeah. The thing you just want to double check here is just to make sure that there weren't any kind of like crazy high average selling price deals that were inflating this, that like a one-time sort of thing. So you look at wins as well. And then what you want to do is kind of like look at a trend there to see like, did somebody have like one bad quarter or something like that. Really quickly here, you can see the blue RIF candidate here. You can see that he's been consistently low for 3 quarters there. You can see the same thing with this this purple person here, Little Debbie, low performing, got a little bit better, but then dove back down again. And then you have like somebody who's in ramp right here, but it looks like their ramp is a little bit slower than everybody else's. So that's why it's important to look at ramps there, or sorry, trends as well. So then what we do is we go and look at will metrics, right? So again, Mr. Woolensworth, Little Debbie, and Jerry Jumbo were our RIF candidates here. Looks like Little Debbie actually, she's putting in the work, right? So her will looks a lot higher than these other folks. This is indicating to me that maybe Jerry and Mr. Woolensworth are the folks that I might be concerned about there. And again, another good will metric there is accounts touched there. And then, of course, looking at the king of activity metrics for, at least for account executives, which is customer-facing meetings. Again, nothing is changing here. No surprises here. Our friend Jerry is consistently low as compared to everybody else, and it looks like his activity is degrading. And then also Mr. Woolensworth is low comparatively. Again, Little Debbie, the one that we were potentially thinking that might be a RIF candidate, her level of her meeting activity is actually pretty substantially high there. So that again tells me that the will is there, right? Maybe we need to upskill her, figure out kind of like what's going on there, but she's putting in the calories there. And so, and then lastly, what you want to do is like before you make your determinations there, and again, you can kind of see Little Debbie's. This is actually making it pretty easy. Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry both have like, their win rates are not dramatically lower than everybody else's, but they're certainly not higher. They're not, substantially higher, where if we got them more opportunities, they would be able to perform. It's just kind of across the board. They're like not taking care of it. And Little Debbie's a little bit higher here, but what, given her will metrics levels that we saw earlier, probably a situation where we could upskill her and get better output coming out of that. So based on the metrics that we've seen here and kind of going through that process of looking at will and skill and then will metrics, it would seem to me that Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry would be the RIF candidates, or probably the people that we would then go ahead and exit from the team here. The last thing that you want to do is you just want to make sure that or you want to look forward from a forecasted pipe standpoint and see if there's anybody, like if you have somebody who's maybe a RIF candidate where their forward pipe is actually much more substantial than you would have anticipated, and maybe just some things got pushed out. Obviously, pressure test that, but transferred pipe, so pipe that gets transferred from an AE who's been exited from the business to other AEs, really has pretty negatively impacted win rates there. Like transferred pipe doesn't closes at a very, very low rate as compared to pipe that AEs have taken from discovery through needs analysis to proposal and what have you. Cool. So, oh yeah, right. So that's, based on the above data, what we saw there was that pretty clearly what we could see was that there were that it looked like there was not a ton of slack in the team, but there were a couple of reps whose will metrics were pretty light specifically, and moreover, there are a couple of reps where if we look at their win rates, we can see like, man, if we can give these guys right here more at bats, the bookings that would come out of that would probably be pretty substantial there. Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry are probably the ones that we would choose to exit from the business there, and then potentially Alice, who is a rep and ramp, but her ramp is a little bit delayed there. So that is how to potentially right size your sales organization if you need to do it. I think we're up on time here, and so just kind of in conclusion, hopefully that was really helpful for folks who might be seeing kind of things in their own business. And they want to take, they want to investigate a little bit more closely and see if they, how to manage their team or how to like use this as an opportunity to make their organization tighter and more efficient. Like I said earlier, if you would like to sign up for Richard's the boot camp, the sales management and sales leadership boot camp, it's a half-day virtual boot camp that we sponsor for folks. We'll go ahead and drop a link in the chat here, and but otherwise, I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their day. Oh, hi, Angelica, you're back.
I'm back. Thank you, Pete and Majhon, for your wisdom today. Again, Pete's awesome slide deck, as well as all the resources he mentioned, and the recording and key takeaways will be made available on the MSP website. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you at the next event.